Good morning. Welcome to the Unitarian Society, a Unitarian Universalist congregation in East Brunswick, New Jersey. Coming to you from many locations throughout central New Jersey and across the country, including for the very first time as a virtual worship associate, me, Angela Pinero, from my home in Metuchen, New Jersey. This week was supposed to give our settled minister, Reverend Karen G. Johnston, a much-deserved break. Instead, sadly, Reverend Karen is covering Sunday service for our UU congregation in Washington Crossing, while their minister, Reverend Kim Wilczewski, and her wife, Tara, grieve the sudden loss of their 2-year-old son. Our deepest sympathies go with Reverend Karen to the Wilczewskis and their family. This morning, I'm joined by our music director, Nicholas Place, and our guest speaker, Mary Early-Zald, a Unitarian Universalist chaplain who is soon to be ordained as a UU minister. Mary describes herself as a nomad who has recently relocated to New Jersey from Nashville and has lived all over the US. Her previous careers include clinical psychology, higher education, and professional coaching. We warmly welcome you to our online Sunday service, whether this is the first or the 100th time of gathering with us. As I continue my welcome, I encourage you to type into the chat where in the world you are joining us from. Feel free throughout this service to use the chat as a way to engage and interact. Feel free to ignore the chat if it is distracting to your experience of our worship time together. This is no time to be alone. While we must stay apart, we must also stick together in all the ways we can in service of flattening the curve during this pandemic. All ages are welcome to this worship service. We have other offerings throughout the week. Sign up to our weekly emails to stay on top of them. Our chat chaplain, Carol Church, will type the email address into the chat for you to sign up if you have not yet. A couple of announcements. One of our congregation's social justice ministries is partnering with other community groups to create the Lost Souls Project. Each year, we hold tenderly and solemnly the responsibility to recite the names of the 180 plus African Americans sold into permanent slavery by a corrupt Middlesex County judge who lived in East Brunswick. This is our spiritual task. No one else does this. So please join us online at 7:30 p.m. this coming Saturday, May 30th, for this special annual event. Your presence will give witness to these lost souls, and you will learn surprising local history as well as about the project's plans to build a memorial. The Zoom link to attend can be found in the weekly email blast and also on our Facebook page. Please consider sharing the link on Facebook and other social media to increase intention and help build momentum as we work towards building a permanent memorial. The annual meeting, originally scheduled for May 17th, has been rescheduled to next Sunday, May 31st at noon. Please join at 11:45 a.m. via the same Zoom link used for service. Annual reports and financial information were emailed this past Tuesday. Please read as much as you can prior to the meeting. We hope you will attend this meeting that will address our financial health, as well as what we envision for our shared congregational life until a vaccine for this virus is found. We will be thanking departing leaders and voting in new slates. Your presence is not only welcome, it is necessary. We share a recording of this service on our YouTube channel. Please feel free to go there. You can find the link on our website and to share in your social networks, friends, and family. After the formal online service is over, there is virtual coffee hour. We hope you will stay. It's another way to make and strengthen connections. And let us now raise up that which is worthy.
Good morning. I'm grateful to be with you all today and welcome you from near and far with these words from Sharon Wiley. You whose hearts who are broken, come in. You whom pain has touched and sorrow and shock. You who have cried this week and read the news with sadness. You whom loss has shadowed. You who grieve. Come in, come in. You with hearts open to joy and hope, come in. You whom love has touched, and friendship and wonder. You who have laughed this week and felt gratitude for life's many blessings. You to whom gifts are given in abundance. You who rejoice. Come in, come in. All our hearts are broken and open. All of us here grieve and rejoice. This is our place and this is our hour to gather and sing and cry and laugh. Come in, let us worship together.
I invite us all now to kindle our at-home chalices, joining our flames with the virtual chalice in our beloved sanctuary, a sign of hope, a beacon of light in dark times, a symbol of resistance against evil. And here is my virtual chalice. And there it is, it's lit. I invite all of you to recite the words of our bond of union, crafted by our founding members as it appears on your screen. In the spirit of community and service, we unite in the quest for those values that give our lives deeper meaning and spiritual satisfaction, reserving to each individual the right to their own beliefs as to the nature of God and the universe.
Welcome to this time for all ages. This is called Alexander's Story, and it's the story about Alexander Hamilton. Many years ago, before the United States became a country, a smart and hardworking boy named Alexander lived with his mother and his brother in the West Indies, Caribbean islands. Alexander's father did not marry his mother, and back then, this meant that their life was very, very hard. But Alexander's mother was able to run her own small store, and the family had each other. Until one day, when Alexander was just 13, his mother became very sick and died. He felt sad, scared, and alone. And people came and took all the family's belongings away, all except the family's books. Alexander's father lived in another place far away and would not pay for the boys' food and home, so Alexander had to work right away. Thankfully, some people were kind to him. They gave him work to do and a place to live. He worked hard and studied too, until he earned enough to buy a ticket to ride on a ship to the American colonies. In America, he worked and studied so hard that he graduated from college, fought next to George Washington in the American Revolution, and became a founder of the United States government, surprising anyone who might have looked down on him. But few people have told the whole story of Alexander Hamilton. Until one day, over 200 years later, an American named Lin-Manuel read a long story about Alexander. Most of Lin's family is from Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico is part of the United States and also in the Caribbean. When Lin read about Alexander, he was so amazed that he could not put the book down. He wondered if society looked down on Alexander just because he didn't have two parents at home growing up, or because he was an immigrant from the Caribbean. He decided to share Alexander's life with the world, so he created the musical Hamilton to do just that. Lin-Manuel says that Alexander's history is our story. And Alexander's story, the musical Hamilton, has been very important to very many people indeed. I invite you into this time of quiet reflection and contemplation. Spirit of life and love, you of all names and beyond naming, help us to know that we are not alone. We are together in our time of joy and noticing these beautiful transitions, that life is change and change is complicated, that we can notice the beauty in difficulty, that we can celebrate joys in the midst of tragedy, that there is spring and flowers even in the midst of pandemic and death. Let us continue to celebrate and grieve and be present to every moment. May it be so, and may we be so. Amen.
Let's now join our voices together and sing Spirit of Life. Spirit of life, come unto me. Sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion. Blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
In the spirit of generosity, we will now take up this morning's offering online. We invite you to cut and paste the link in the chat, which will take you to our PayPal portal. We call it Be the Change. What was once the change in our pockets, using our financial sources to be the change we want to see in the world. Half of what you give through PayPal this morning will go to a worthy cause outside our congregation. The other half will go towards sustaining this congregation, which sustains you, which lives out our principles and values as deeply and widely as our imaginations allow, which provides connection and promotes compassion. Today's Be the Change is going to Aldersgate Outreach Community Center, formerly known as the Crisis House, just up Riders Lane from our congregation. As of May 14th, they reported that they are seeing an increase in the number of folks needing food assistance. Your help through food or monetary donations is so appreciated. In addition to monetary donations, they accept donations of non-perishable, future-dated food donations, which may be made at the pantry on Sundays, Tuesdays, or Fridays from 11:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. Volunteers are available to take items from your car. Items they need are rice, pasta, grape jelly, ramen noodles, cereal, canned chicken, peanut butter, toilet paper, diapers size 4T and 5T, adult sizes large and extra large. May your generosity heal the world and strengthen your heart.
So I'm going to need your help in presenting this homily and doing this homily, singing a refrain from the song we just heard. We'll practice this now, and I'll signal you during the homily when it's time to sing, as you're moved. So I'll sing it, and then sing it after me. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? So I can't hear you in my ear, but I can hear you in my mind's eye. And it sounds wonderful. So thank you. Who lives, who dies, who tells the stories? Yes, we're all living and dying, so what's Lynn's question really? I think he's asking, who thrives? Who survives? Who does society favor? Whose lives do we cut short and why? Who decides? How do we tell the stories of other people? Who tells the forgotten stories? The space between expectation and reality is full of narrative emotion. Disappointment to tragedy, humor to joy, our human tale. Lin-Manuel's Hamilton is a masterpiece about narrative, how story shapes us, our world, and our experience of it. Please join me as I take you on a short historical journey of my own. I entered the 1990s as young, scrappy, and naively optimistic as Hamilton's 18th century American colonies. Unimaginable events hit my family in the following years like a series of unexpected tidal waves, knocking me off my feet and pushing me inevitably off of my planned path toward my authentic call. Join me, please. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives? On March 2nd, 1997, in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I was into my 3rd week of complete bed rest, just starting my 25th week of my first pregnancy. In other words, I had been pregnant for 5.5 months. I entered preterm labor that day. Within hours, we learned our baby would be born, and doctors gave her small chances for survival. We went back and forth between devastation and shock. It was unimaginable. Fortunately, our insurance carrier had us transferred immediately to the close by best level 3 neonatal intensive care unit in the region. Kalila Marie Early-Zald was born at 10 p.m. that night, weighing 1 pound, 7 ounces. Kalila's Hebrew name is Nessa, which means miracle. Over these many years, she grew up and we love her mightily. Throughout her struggles, we have told her stories of her birth with words like miracle, strong, and survivor. She shows grit, overcoming obstacles, including anyone who would underestimate her. At the same time, Kalila is aware that privilege is part of her narrative. She benefited from our good insurance, closeness to high-quality healthcare, extended family who could stay with us, helpful work environments, and on and on. I know hundreds of caregivers of preterm kids who tried just as hard as we did the same and more, and had far more difficult outcomes, including grieving the death of their child. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who dies? 9 months after I started 1990, fresh-eyed and optimistic, my younger brother, Robert, 26 at that time, called me from California to tell me that the pandemic, which ravaged the country at that time, had infected him, HIV. Robert was always genuinely himself, atypical in so many ways. He was brilliant, creative, generous, extremely outgoing, occasionally annoying, fun, emotionally expressive, possibly ADD, and gay. He came out to us when he was 19 in the early 80s and went on to live a life of integrity. I did not even learn the depths of his courage until I watched how he lived with HIV. He told us all right away, cashed in his life insurance, as many people did at that time, and lived the life he always wanted, traveling internationally and making friends everywhere he went. He was honest and always kept a sense of humor. During a miraculous healthy break, he helped walk me down the aisle at my wedding. In the 4th year of his illness, he had but one goal, and he met it. Robert Early celebrated his 30th birthday in the hospital before dying from complications of AIDS-related complex 1 month later in 1994. Thanks to Robert, our family knew that our beloved and closeted father, Keith, was gay as well. 2 years after Robert received his diagnosis, Dad called to tell me that he had skin cancer, quote unquote. My intuition told me that there was more to the story. And by the time that my father told us that he was sick, he was in his last months, dying of AIDS. My father's closeted life and death from AIDS, though, is only a tiny fraction of his narrative. Kind to a fault, he was, in fact, the first person to, quote unquote, ordain me, meaning setting me on the path to ministry without even knowing it. Living in West Hollywood and spending much time in 1970s San Francisco, he was well aware of Harvey Milk's work. During a car ride when I was a child, he responded to my brothers and my homophobic jokes with uncharacteristic sternness and seriousness. What consenting adults do behind closed doors that doesn't hurt anyone is nobody's business, he said. How did my then 11-year-old closeted gay brother feel when my father said that? My view of sexual orientation changed forever that day. My father died on February 2nd, 1993, less than 6 months after I knew he was sick. He was 57. My heart broke. Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who lives, who dies, who tells your story? Who tells the stories? We are in a time when narrative's power is on full display. Whose story is favored? Who do we believe? Whose story does history distort, fade, or just never tell? One reason Lin-Manuel Hamilton is a genius creation is what it teaches us about what's called historical memory. This means the fluid collection of family, religious, and national memory, which shapes how we identify with certain narratives. Andrew Hamilton is complicated, seen from many angles, whose story American history has neglected. This musical, with its race-conscious casting and hip-hop construction, asks us, what other stories have we missed, distorted, passed by, ignored? Eliza and Alexander Hamilton sing "It's Quiet Uptown," the song from the first video, after their son dies in a gun duel. The indirect references to young Black and brown people's tragic deaths haunted me in this song. After Alexander dies violently, Eliza Hamilton has her inspiring last say as she tells their story. And I'm still not through. I ask myself, what would you do if you had more time? The Lord, in his kindness, he gives me what you always wanted. He gives me more time. I speak out against slavery. If you only had more time. Can I show you what I'm proudest of? The orphanage. I established the first private orphanage in New York City, the orphanage. I helped to raise hundreds of children. I get to see them growing up. In their eyes, I see you, Alexander. And when my time is up, have I done enough? Will they tell my story? How do I tell Kalila, Robert, and Dad's stories? Eliza Hamilton teaches that we have the power to embody our loved ones' stories every day. Going back to my story, I wandered in a desert of career dissatisfaction for more than 15 years after my family's suffering turned me into a completely different person. Then I realized that, like Eliza, I needed to honor their stories in my life. I then answered my call to change my corner of the world, to heal white supremacist patriarchy, so that people die less frequently from oppression. I am here to love, to fight, and if necessary, to die for this call. The unimaginable happens all the time. How we rise from tragedy and embody memory can be revolutionary. Imagine caregivers rising up and sharing short stories of their child shot dead by law enforcement and people who think they're acting as law enforcement. Imagine our siblings overseas crying out over lost homelands and families. Imagine our trans and gender expansive friends and family sharing stories of loved ones murdered simply for who they are. Imagine loved ones of the hundreds and thousands dead and dying. Yes, and everyone identifying as family of today's pandemic, oppression and violence, grieving and loving and fighting together in solidarity. Everyone gathered here embodies stories, those of memory, loved ones here and long gone, souls who have kindled your flame of hope and imagination. I honor your narrative gifts in all their forms. I encourage you to set aside the notion that there is one right way, just as Alexander Burr is complex too. He is part of the resistance, even in his own cautious way. So cherish the stories you tell in the unique, beautiful font and binding you package them. It is not just about acting up. Just tell those neglected stories. Rise up, rise up. Let's not throw away our shot. That's how we change the world. May it be so, and may we be so. Amen.
And now, as we come to the end of our service together, please join me in extinguishing your chalices by reciting the words on your screen. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again.
Thank you for joining us today. I will send you out with this blessing from Mark Mosher DeWolf. With what benediction shall I leave you? This: in your life, may you know the holy meaning, the mystery that breaks into it every moment. May you live at peace with your world and at peace with yourself. And may the love of truth guide you in your everyday. Amen.
Thank you, Mary Early-Zald, for joining us today and for sharing your stories with us. And to this morning's worship team, thank you. Our music director, Nick Place, who also put together the visuals, our Zoom tech, Hazel Schubert, and our chat chaplain, Carol Church, and all of you for being with us this morning. After the postlude, and the final slide is shown for a few moments, you'll receive an invitation to join a breakout room for virtual coffee hour, which will last for about 15 minutes. Please click join if you want to attend. It's another way we share fellowship and stay connected in this difficult time. And now, please listen to Nick's postlude. Thank you and have a wonderful week.